Thank you for coming here to listen to hopefully some sort of a knowledge sharing presentations with CyberTalk. As you have heard, my title is a professor. It's probably something that you think very boring, uninteresting, too difficult, and so on. I will try to make this presentation as entertaining as I can. But given that, Zia has asked me to talk about my research. What do we do in my center? How do we address the cybersecurity risks? What do we do in general? What projects we have? So on my day-to-day basis, sort of 9 to 5, in a large office with fantastic brains, I have 5 or 6 more professors working with me in different areas. We sit around and we work on different projects and think of solutions to different problems. The problems come from the outside. People come and ask us to do some sort of analysis either of the landscape of risks or cybersecurity trends, or where they're going to a specific country, what should be they worried about, and so on, or to look at a set of specific problems that they might or might not face, or to find a solution to something that has happened or they are experiencing or might foresee happening as such. And then, of course, I have my own pet projects, which I do quite a lot. We get research funding to do, and then we publish a lot of black and white papers at the end. So towards the end of my presentation, I hopefully will be able to show you some of the results of my research. They might be black and white, but we'll see how it goes. Anyways, so my name is Vladlena Benson. I'm very easy to Google, so you might come across all my Google Scholar profiles and stuff, so I'm just going to move on from here. I also should say that I am a dedicated customer of Moonpig, where some of the pictures should not be seen in public that were sent on some of the birthday cards. Anyways, moving on from there, okay? What I will talk about today is kind of a spectrum of our research, what we have done, from the point of view of the bridge stage or digital future. Where do we stand? What do you think is going to happen? And what are the sort of subtle risks and subtle trends that will affect, I don't want to say 10 years ahead, because the cybersecurity landscape changes very, very quickly. But someone needs to think of what's going to happen in about 10 years' time. There's even a job role for someone who thinks, whose responsibility is to think about what's going to happen in 30 years' time. I'm kind of in between, where we analyze trends. We look at how society is responding to different changes, to different technological changes in my case. And mostly those trends are driven by what all of us have experienced so far. We have societal implications, and Yasmin mentioned AI. Well, we call it augmented intelligence, or machine learning, deep learning algorithms, and so on. And I will talk about that a little bit later, because it drives absolutely everything we do. In the next decade, we need to up our game as sort of against cybersecurity threats. All of the solutions that my lab is developing are all based on AI, ML, deep learning, and so on. But we need to also understand that cybersecurity challenges and measures are only as effective as the counter adversaries of those who are providing the solutions. So as we have this kind of the arm race with AI on one side and AI on the other side, we will never stop. We will have to go and go and go until the solutions are improved and evolve. The other thing is, I usually ask, how many people have a mobile device on them? This is now a rhetorical question, isn't it? Because everybody does. You can ask how many you have and go from there, and how many we're projected to have in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But this is the direction where we're moving, and with the security issues, measures, and solutions, taking care of issues that arise with the mobility of the world, of your workforce, of solutions. This is the trend which will probably see our desktops and perimeter of the organization vanish in the near future. Social platforms are old technology. I shouldn't say that, mature technology in our terms. We know that it's here to stay because we got used to it and because our children by now got used to it and grew up with it as well. So this is the issue that we have at the moment, where quite a lot of victimization, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, happen or occur or is based, and I'm sure that Daryl will pick up quite a few points from there when he talks about his points. Anyways, I also like graphs. You could tell, right? So me and Yasmin had sat down together yesterday and kind of coordinated our development of the slides. We just like graphs together. But the part that I do is on a yearly basis, we analyze risks. We don't analyze risks in our lab, we analyze them globally. What people, what organizations, what governments as such, because governments have to analyze risks and tell us what to do or decide what they're going to do as such, provide a global risk and risk trends survey, which once a year is issued to guide or to look at the societal problems as such. And each year it slightly changes, but the the axles or the dimensions are still more or less the same. Weapons of mass destruction, how afraid we are of social instability, whether our governments will survive or not, etc., to some really detrimental things which we hope will never happen, like a global famine or, we completely run out of water. So on that kind of scale, the bottom of this graph, it was supposed to be like that. So the bottom of this graph deals only with technology. And year after year, new risks and new concerns of the governments and the population make it there. And in this year, for 2018, cyber attacks, so you could see that they're slightly more emphasized on the graph as such, have made it to being on the same schedule, on the same scale as, let's say, failure of governance or profound social instability. You also could see that the dependency, exactly what Yasmin was talking about, it was quite interesting for me to find out how she is ranking and looking at risks, draw together. I mean, they clearly influence cyber attacks, data fraud or theft, critical information infrastructure breakdown, and the adverse consequences of technological advances. This is the first year that the adverse consequences of technological advances have become so prominent. They have kind of been lurking in the background before, but we know that with the changes in AI, with the changes in the workforce, with the implications of cyber dependency and so on, the world is changing. What I wanted to emphasize here is that data fraud or theft is not just a standalone risk or an activity. It links in an ecosystem of the society. And it links in with everything from cyber attacks to critical infrastructure failure. To give you an idea, this is deemed as very likely, as high impact, and not only how, but when is the question. The last but not least, is my look into the next decade. What's going to happen? What will change? Will cyber fraud, risk, theft, identity theft, and so on, will go away from our let's say, horizon of risk and stuff? No. What even is more prominent over the last few years is the rise of cyber dependency. We cannot see ourselves in the next decade, easily 2, easily 3, without relying on computing devices, and they will drive the changes in the society as such. So rising cyber dependency has been deemed one of the most important trends to shape the global development. We also look in my research center, we also have to keep a very horizontal, let's say, eye on the different reports of the cybersecurity trends. And depending on the vendor, you might get a different report depending on what is the new solution that they're trying to push. kind of a different aspect of the breach, or a different vulnerabilities are emphasized, or different solution is trying to be pushed, and so on. Because my lab is vendor agnostic, we try to triangulate all the data. But what is happening is, as we look through all the trends, as we look through the reports from large cybersecurity and not cybersecurity companies, we notice what is changing and what has kind of been an emphasis over the last year. Major cybersecurity threats, there you go, trends are reported as stealthy and subtle. It's no longer a major, so 2018 has been marked by this trends. We also saw 2018 flaws of hardware being uncovered that are previously seen as being totally secure. Everyone knows to patch hardware is a lot harder than to patch software. A significant shift away from highly visible ransomware. Obviously, everyone remembers 2017 and so on, and the shock that it gave everyone from system admins to cybersecurity professionals, etc. But from the visible ransomware, we see a lot more of sort of subtle trends. Okay, now vendor specific. If we look at the number of vulnerabilities that have been found in, let's say, the first half of 2018, because this is more or less of a reliable time frame, we see a lot of Apple, Adobe, some movements between Google and Microsoft, which we can and cannot explain without knowing a lot of things that are going on inside. But is something missing here at all? I mean, Apple is understandable. iPhones, iPads, etc., etc. Adobe kind of goes together with this. Microsoft, you can believe or not that the vulnerabilities went down. Google and so on. But something is missing here. And I'm going to give a virtual chocolate to the person who will spot it in the next couple of slides. The good thing about virtual chocolate is that you can have as many as you want, even if you are on a diet. Moving on. Malware is, vulnerabilities are exploited. Our malware is getting more and more sophisticated. With the fileless malware and other threats with non-traditional evasion techniques, my repertoire of projects is growing further and further, because we have to look at what we could do in terms of signature-based is no longer working. What do we do? How do we train our malware detection mechanisms and so on to prevent the stealth attacks? The fileless are malicious files that are installed and executed in the compromised device. They usually, it's a slightly different evasion techniques, and we're working from the point of view of looking at how the hijack trusted tools are manipulated. But Zia is really trying to tell me that I'm running out of time. I might have to hold back my my virtual chocolates and stuff until the Q&A session and stuff. But what I wanted to say is to go back to my slide of the vendor-specific vulnerabilities. What is the issue? So we talked about the fact that in about 10 years, probably mobility will only escalate and exponentially grow. However, one operating system you have not seen on the vulnerability scanning horizon. However, Android is the biggest mobile operating system in the world. 2.3 billion or so, not too long ago sort of statistics, accounting for more than 95% of 3.1 billion active smartphones in the world. And just to say, is there a problem? Each device obviously has corporate, private information brought onto the perimeter of the organizations that we're trying to protect. Many techniques cannot detect a non-malware, and we have, well, the whole whitelisting, blacklisting of the app stores may or may not work everywhere. But my question is surrounds around this, and I might sort of let you sort of think about it a little bit further. Here is the background of Android devices. In India, 96% of all smartphones are Android. In China, Android is #1 in the market. We are looking at, fragmentation of manufacturers. We are talking about the emergence of all sorts of budget Android devices spread around third world countries, and all sorts of things happening in between, where the brands that are originating outside of Europe moving into the Western market. And what we have at the moment is concerned with devices, budget activated in developing countries, 400 plus Android manufacturers operating, problems of fragmentation, and it creates major challenging for security. If you hold an Apple phone, you update uniformly all at the same time. I'm not going to go to the next slide. I'm just going to go skip at the next one. For Android OS 8 Oreo, in the 4 months since its release, only 1% of devices was updated. Do you see a problem? I have a lot of various images and so on. I will be more than happy to talk to you about that a little bit later, because Zia is looking at me a bit, with a bit of unhappy eye. But please take down my work or my Isaka email. I will be more than happy to connect with yourselves, particularly as we are having more and more questions. Come talk to me, perhaps we can help you. On the other hand, I also have a number of open PhD opportunities. Anyone would like to be a doctor? Come talk to me. Other than that, I think that you have been a fantastic audience. I think all of you deserve a virtual chocolate at the end. Thank you so much for listening.